another episode of the Square and Compass podcast. Finally back doing another podcast. It feels like it's been a long time. Here with Martin Ouellette, a good Windsor name if ever there was one, just like the street. He is with, well, more generally, Martin, you are with the art scene and the theater scene in Windsor, but
Yes,
particularly you are with Bloomsbury House and Temple Blooms, which is what we're going to talk about here today. So thank you so much for joining.
no problem. Thanks, Cameron, for having me.
Right, so, the reason that I'm speaking to you is because in 1 week, actually, it is 1 week as of today, you are hosting a very special event at the Windsor Masonic Temple, Temple of Bloom, Shindig of Destiny. Before we talk about that, I do want to talk more. Tell me, what is your connection to the Windsor Masonic Temple and kind of Freemasonry in Windsor?
Well, when I was a kid, growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, the Masonic Temple Ballroom here was sort of a major downtown cultural hub. On the weekends, everybody would get on the buses and come downtown for the all ages dances or the punk shows. All kinds of stuff was happening here. So while my connection to Masonry itself is not personal, my connection to this building is. And I was very active in the community with the fact that, or educating the public about the fact that there are very, very few active performing arts venues in the core of Windsor. And the number is actually dwindling. A number of the bars that would host performing arts have shut down and moved out downtown. So my city councilor, Ronaldo Agostino, put me in touch with the Masonic Temple board because he had heard, I guess through a little birdie, that that the temple was interested in reactivating the ballroom. And that really dovetailed with my company's mission, which is the reactivation of art spaces. So I came in for a meeting, I did some drawings and some pitches, and the board brought my company in to revitalize the space as a performing arts venue.
And I mean, you've been posting a lot on Facebook. I'm not going to go through all of it because there's a lot, but just in terms of what that revitalization has meant, right? I mean, you talked about some of the revitalizations or investments you've already made, and I'm going to screw up all of these pronunciations. Pre-Sonos audio mixing consoles for 3K, stage box 2K, active speakers, new stage lighting fixtures, 16 units of acoustic panels, computer, monitor accessories, show like you have like you said, taken a lot of efforts to revitalize the space.
My company spent about $12,000 or $13,000 at this point, and this is our first month in here. So with our fundraiser that's happening next weekend, every dollar that comes in on that fundraiser is going to be reinvested in the space. I do have a wish list of the next steps of revitalization, but as it stands now, we are pretty much set to be, as you can see in the background there, a full music venue. The only thing we're really missing that would be on my wish list for music is a center subwoofer, which is about a $3,000 buy. So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to pay for that after the fundraiser. But yeah, so there's a brand new set of powered speakers. There's a new audio console. There's a stage box, which really simplifies everything for visiting artists. They can literally bring their equipment on stage. Everybody can plug into the same box. We don't need any direct boxes or any of that nonsense. And then I can operate everything from the board. And we're trying to set it up very consciously as what I call a plug and play venue, which is that people can walk through the door, talk to me. We set up all their cues, all of their sound. They can plug in and go. It's not like the Chrysler Theater where it takes 3 hours to load in. We want people to come in, be able to do their show, get paid, walk out.
The you mentioned the fundraiser, and I mentioned the fundraiser as well, right? Which we want to talk about again. I'm going to leave a link for that in the description to this video. But we talk about, we mentioned at the start, right? You're heavily involved in the art and culture scene of Windsor. I mean, I think that probably that's best reflected in the fundraiser you have coming up, because just looking at the poster here, right? You've got 10 different artists at least that you've got booked. You've been doing a lot of stuff on Facebook to show the bios of these artists. What has the response been like for you in terms of when you first approached the artists about performing at the Masonic Temple? I know some, like the Fontaines, have performed in that space in the past, but what was the response like for you when you approached them, and what's the response been like from the community in terms of this event?
The excitement is palpable. There are a lot of people, especially in my age cohort, I just turned 50 years old, that are extremely excited about this space being reactivated because they have such great memories from their own childhoods and teen years of, like I say, coming here for the all age dances. There are people who met their spouses here, people who came down for the punk shows. And this was a friend of mine who's actually DJing our event on October 12th. He dug up a couple flyers from 1980 of, I'm not sure that I can't remember the name of the band offhand, but a punk show here in 1980, which is, just a few years after the scene began to begin with. So this space was a leading arts venue. It wasn't just a, a progressive arts venue. It was a leading arts venue that was bringing in shows like that when even the bars weren't hosting that sort of entertainment. So people who have deep emotional connections to those scenes, especially, are extremely excited about this. And as far as the theater community goes, that's my main gig. Is I'm a theater producer. My company primarily does children's theater, and we've been operating out of the Chrysler Theater for the past half decade. We were looking for our own space where we could rehearse and perform and bring in buses of school kids and stuff. So this worked out great for us. But for other arts groups who were in the same situation that we were, which was having all kinds of product, having an audience out there that's willing to pay for the product, but there's nowhere in the city, literally, for them to actually get that product on stage. So huge thanks to the Masonic Temple for giving us this opportunity to make this, again, a public space where the creative people of this city can, in an accessible way, because the way my company's setting it up is that there are no upfront fees for local companies. Everything that, all the revenue is generated off of the ticket sales. So again, it's a turnkey venue. These arts groups who have been without a home for a decade, hopefully now have a place where they will be able to just walk in, put their product on stage. The audience can come in, pay for that product, and these transactions, this economic activity that's just sitting on the shelf because our city has not done anything to support it, will hopefully have another avenue of success.
Well, I mean, to its credit, I will say on the side of the city, I mean, Ronaldo has been a great supporter of, and the mayor, of the building, and also they had some different arts initiatives. But to see, well, I'm happy that more being is done, but I'm particularly happy more is being done kind of in my Masonic home and in um, a place that's so important to Windsor, right? The Windsor Masonic Temple. You mentioned the word accessible. Also, it's worth pointing out that not just from financial standpoint, but for abilities, right? The Masonic Temple has an elevator, it has a lift, it has all the accessible entrance with so it has accessible washrooms, so that as well, right? Anybody can take part in events there
Yeah,
when they're coming
there's
down, which I
no
wanted to
other
mention
space
as
in
well.
the, sorry to interrupt, but there's no other space in the city other than the Chrysler Theater and the Capitol Theater where that is possible. All of the other small theaters have accessibility issues. They do their best to accommodate. Some have put in lifts, Some have put in other types of accessibility architecture. But the long and the short of it is that this is a fully accessible space. It has been kept in really good shape. And it's, you know, it seems natural to me to want to open that up to the public because it's an incredible venue. And I think that this is a really good opportunity for the temple to bring more people into the space and see what the temple has accomplished over these 100 years that they've been in this building. And I think that it's going to be a boon for the temple itself, for the lodges, and for the arts community as a whole. And I just think it's a win-win for everybody, and I'm very proud to be involved.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned, the little birdie, right? That was the initial contact kind of, I'm not on the temple board itself, but that initial contact kind of came through me. Ronaldo contacted me and told me that or you didn't tell me your name at the time. I think you just said, we have this theater company that's looking for space, and I know that the temple is available. And I'm very happy it worked out. I'm 50% of me is excited because I'm going to be for Thanksgiving back home in Winnipeg, wrestling and seeing my family. So that makes me happy, but I'm also very sad that I'm going to miss the Temple of Bloom show. I did buy a ticket, which actually is going to go to Jason Durd. I think it's supposed to go to Michelle, but I don't know if he. So I got my ticket. I'm going to probably buy another one for a friend of mine.
Thank you for
I
your support.
like looking at the artists. I know Travis quite well. I saw the Fontaines perform. They're great. The What has the response been like, that you've been seeing, not from the we already talked about the artists that are going to be, or the performers, from the public? What have you been seeing on Facebook? What have you been seeing when you talk to people? What's the advertising been like? And are there still tickets available? How do you get them? All that jazz.
Okay, so yes, there are still tickets available. Sales have been very strong. Considering what I know of pre-sales for theater shows, I haven't done a lot of fundraisers in the past. My company doesn't usually fundraise. We are what I call a bums and seats company. We make money. We don't take grants. We make our money off of selling tickets and bringing people into the room for a show. That's how we make money. So we haven't done a lot of fundraisers. But again, if theater sales are any indication, then our sales are really strong. The lineup we have is amazing. We have Chrissy Cochran, we have Andrew McLeod, we've got Tim Swadling, all of whom are major local name singer-songwriters. The Fontaines, as you mentioned, Sarah and Ryan Fontaine. Sarah sings with the Windsor Symphony Orchestra. Ryan is a sessional bass guy who's played all over the world and in studio as well. And then we also have sort of a theater and opera component in the second act, which includes Amelia Daigle, who's probably Windsor's most prestigious soprano. She just got back from performing in Berlin for multiple weeks. And we also have Sam Bork, Benjamin Donkum, Elysia Tarian, basically the cream of the crop of young music theater singers. And that'll be in the second act. And then the second act is closed by Bitters, which is a local sort of experimental art rock group, which is also made up of a bunch of guys who are sort of the young stars of local theater. So we've got a singer-songwriter, jazz, folk component in the first act, which will appeal to one audience, and then we have a theater and opera component in the second act, which will draw in a completely other audience. So we're hoping that we fuse those two audiences and have a really successful event. It's tough because it's Thanksgiving weekend. So some of the people who would normally be spending money on fundraisers will be out of town, but a lot of them have bought tickets and donated tickets for us to raffle over the course of the next week. So no, the sales are going well, and we've already we've surpassed $1,500 in pre-sales, and all of that money has been reinvested in the space already, because there's not only the fancy stuff like the sound and lights and everything, there's a million little jobs that need to be done too, right? This is a space that hasn't really been activated in decades. So, you know, there's little details that need to be taken care of that haven't really been upkept, I guess. So there's been some outlay on our part to try and get all of that up to speed for the 12.
I mean, I think like everything, right? Things kind of go in cycles. When I joined in 2007 Freemasonry, and at that time, it seemed like most of the events that were held in that ballroom were weddings primarily in that time period. Before I understand, before my time, and like you had talked about, starting in the 50s and moving up through the 80s, it was dances on Friday nights primarily, and so there's been different types of cycles. I don't know, and it excites me a lot. I don't know if there's ever been a actual theater company or theater productions in that space before, which I think is wonderful if we see it. So I think this does present a really unique opportunity for something new in that space that maybe we haven't seen before, and maybe a lot of different new things. Like, again, your background is theater, your background is theater primarily, performing arts, but we've talked online, right? You seem to be really open to all sorts of events, like movie screenings,
Mm-hmm.
or I know some people in professional wrestling, like, I
Mm-hmm.
think that you seem open to some different types of events that maybe haven't been done there in the past, that could um also, like we've talked about, like reinvigorate the space, or provide new opportunities for both the arts and culture scene and the Masonic Temple and Bloomsbury House.
Yes, I very clearly see my mission as handed down to me by the board, to be the activation and the monetization at the end of the day of the space. And whatever events lend themselves to that, that's what we're going to book in here. I'm a theater producer. I was also in the music industry for almost 20 years, and I toured all over Europe, all over North America, a little bit in Southeast Asia. I've been in a lot of different venues. I've seen how things are done in music venues all over the world. And I also still have a lot of contacts in that business. So I've already had bookers from Toronto and Vancouver, even after I've posted some pictures of what we're doing with the space, contact me and ask about the facility, ask about our if we have a bar license, what's our capacity, what's our management situation, and so I'm hoping that we can also get this venue on the tour list for mid-major artists, because there's, especially in Canada, there's a lot of bands, a lot of folk musicians, jazz musicians who can draw 300 or 400 people in a city the size of Windsor. But that's not really enough for them to justify booking the Capitol Theatre or the Chrysler Theatre or the Casino. And below 650 capacity, which is the Capitol Theatre, there is nothing until you get down to about 80. So there's this entire sort of missing bandwidth of available venue facilities in Windsor on the whole. Like, that's not just in the core, that's all the way out to the suburbs. So this is a really great opportunity for not just performing arts in Windsor, but also for music and performing arts, nationally, especially if we can get on the tour lists, because they want to come through. A lot of bands, I was one of them. We would drive right through Windsor to go and play Ann Arbor or go and play Detroit or something. Or bands coming the other way from the States drive right through Windsor and go and play London at what used to be Zaphod's. and go up to Toronto to play the Horseshoe or whatever and just skip Windsor. Not because they didn't want to play Windsor, not because there weren't audiences in Windsor, but because there were literally no venues where they could make enough money to justify stopping overnight with 6 people, pay for hotels, pay for food, anything else that they need, and still walk out of town, with a positive in the bank account. So it's a great opportunity to be able to hopefully provide that.
And then it's also, worth mentioning that space, aside from, like I said, when I first joined, being used a lot for weddings, it felt like. Also, if there was a Masonic event or Masonic banquet, that would be held down there as well. And once again, I'm sure if Border Cities Lodge or where I'm Worshipful Master or any lodge wanted to hold a banquet, again, get in touch with Temple Blooms and talk about, obviously, and this is, one of those things that's a good thing, I think, is because the space is going to be used so much more now, which is good. Lodges and Masonic bodies should hopefully give a bit more notice when they're booking it to try to work out what the best dates are. Because we don't want the type of thing where, a week out, we're asking to use the ballroom. But again, right, it's one of those things where that space is still available for Masonic events. And hopefully, the other benefit I was seeing with this is one thing we're always looking for, or not always, but often looking for with a Masonic event is entertainment and performers, right? And we have kind of our. It was always kind of done primarily as like I know a guy or whoever's doing it knows somebody and contacts them, but you're gonna have a potentially, or you will have a much more in-depth list of performers and availabilities, and you can maybe connect us with some performers we wouldn't know of previously and some entertainers we wouldn't know of previously.
Yeah, as a producer, as a theater producer, it's a big part of my job is literally just keeping track of talent. It's knowing who's coming up, knowing who's got this skill, that skill, who can command a stage by themselves for a good period of time, which is what you need either to play a lead in a show or do your own cabaret or front a band or any of these other things that require that sort of front person charisma. And it's a point of pride for me to know who the talent is. And it's also important for my business because I need to know who's available. When I'm looking at a show, I have to be able to read the script and say, this person's right for this person's right for this, and approach them and get them. So we don't audition very much, my company. We know who we want. We go out and we make an offer. And 90% of the time we get the person that we're after. So it will be the same for booking shows in here. I already have a number of people who are interested in doing solo shows, cabarets, all those sorts of performances here. And that would actually be a really good opportunity for members of the lodges to come in and, for lack of a better word, shop for the entertainment that they want for their own events. Because all of these people are professionals. They're, if you're willing to cut them a check, they're going to show up and give you their best performance. So this city is full of talent. It's incredible. I've lived in Toronto, I've lived in Kingston, I lived in Amsterdam for a brief period of time. Windsor competes with all of them when it comes to the level, ability, skill, training of the performing arts talent. The only thing that we don't have are the physical facilities, the venues for that talent to get in front of their audiences and for that financial exchange of the purchase of the ticket to happen. That's the choke point in arts in this city. The talent is there, the audience is there. The only thing that's been missing, like I say, are these mid-sized venues that are large enough for people to turn a profit, small enough that they're not spending their entire budget on renting the space.
And this kind of, to broaden out a little bit, one of my I've got many issues with Freemasonry, even though I love it. I think whenever you're part of anything, you're going to develop issues with it. Just like I'm sure you have issues with the theater community, right? One
Yes.
of my biggest concerns with Freemasonry as a whole is there can sometimes be an island mentality amongst Masonic buildings and Masons in whatever city they find themselves, right? And I've written about this on Medium. It's shameless plug. Please check it out. Like the way I describe it is you to me anyways, you can't separate the success of a community from the success of the Masonic building or Masonic lodges. Or you can't separate the success of a Masonic lodge from the success of the city in which it's located, right? Which means it makes there's no benefit to just say we're just going to worry about our whatever, our building, our lodge being as strong as possible, and not think about the broader community and how it's doing. Because if you have a successful city or community, you're more than likely going to have a successful Masonic lodge, and vice versa. And I think kind of what you talked about, like it only makes sense to my mind for a Masonic lodge to look and try to support local artists and hire them out for events and to support local productions. And again, this is just as true. And I wrote a whole thing about, when I was in Glenview, Illinois, and the lodges there doing some work to support some local businesses, to Windsor. And so a lodge taking the time to reach out to local artists and producers and try to get them involved and support them, I think can only result in a better Masonic experience and a better community experience. And right, there's no, I've never understood, and this isn't a Windsor specific thing. This is a Masonic thing. This sometimes kind of beggar be thy neighbor approach that some Masonic buildings will take to their communities. And so that's another reason why I was excited when Ronaldo contacted me, and I was excited with the work you're doing, because this is a chance for the building to support the community and for the community to support the building, right? I think that's a really important thing.
Yes, because there is a per night rental fee on performances that will be paid directly to the temple on every performance, every night that we have stuff booked in here. And then there is also an additional ticket surcharge percentage, which will be rendered to the temple as well. So the higher capacity of the venue, or the higher capacity of the event, the more money that is rendered to the temple. And it's a big, huge facility. It's a massive building. It's over 100 years old. I live in a house that was built in 1928 downtown. I know what maintenance costs are like, and I know how maintenance costs have been increasing with inflation over the last few years. So I think that on top of the fact that this room is one of the best advertisements that for your organization that I could imagine, because people are going to walk in here and say, what kind of organization has built this incredibly beautiful purpose-built space? Uh, and yeah, I just again, coming back to sort of the win-win, like this has not been generating much revenue for the temple over the last many years. And I think that it's based on what I've seen with again, the way that maintenance costs are expanding. I really think it may be necessary, on top of just beneficial, but necessary, even if it's not through my company, for the temple to find a way to more reliably monetize this space, just for the upkeep of the space itself, honestly.
In terms of the future, I'm sure 99% of your brain right now is focused on October 12th because it's coming up so soon. But I know you've got some showings today. You've had some showings in the past. So post October 12th, what type of things do you see happening? Is the plan to start doing some work before the holiday season, before Christmas, or is kind of 2025 the plan when things are really going to start picking up? What do you see coming up post the fundraiser?
Well, it's tough until the new year because we don't have Fridays until the new year, which makes it impossible for me to bring in theater companies because theater companies need to run Thursday to Sunday. They're not going to come in, set up on a Thursday, go dark on a Friday, and then run Saturday, Sunday. It's just not feasible. So even for my own theater productions, we'll look at doing something probably like a kids show uh, before Christmas or before the holidays. But as far as bringing in outside theater companies, it's really tough. What we are managing to book is cabarets, is individual performers, singer songwriters. We have one of the performers at our fundraiser, Tim Swadling, the poet laureate of Kingsville. He's actually going to come in at towards the end of October and record an entire album here over the course of 3 days, which is a really, really cool project. It is honestly one of the things that was in the back of my mind when I was designing the acoustic treatment. I'll just turn the camera around here, and you can see these big panels here on either side of the light uh, and above the door there. Each one of those is a 5 foot by 3 foot pine frame filled with 5 inches deep of rock wool insulation. And when we first walked into the space, and when I would bring especially theater people in to view the space, there was so much reverb and echo in here because this was designed in 1921 for performance that is not amplified. So as soon as you put any amplification on sound in here, it was getting really distorted and hard to understand. A lot of crosstalk. So what these 16 panels that we fabricated and hung in here are accomplishing is to really dampen that reverb and has really improved the usability of the space such that we can bring in a band that really cares about the sound that wants to record in here. They came in and rehearsed here a couple weeks ago, and they just fell in love with the space, and now they're going to come back and they're going to pay to record an album here.
The sorry, can you find the mute button there for a second? Yeah, that I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. The technical aspects of like, because that's a really interesting thing. When the building was built in 1921, 22, as most Masonic temples of that time period, Detroit probably most famously, they were being built with the expectation of public usage of events to offset costs, and so that the membership did not have to shoulder the entire cost of the building. But like that's, and this isn't a knock on the people from 1921, right? They could only consider the technology they really had at the time.
Yeah.
But so we talked about the cost. You mentioned the 12,000 or thereabouts that you've put into it for a modern experience and bands recording and playing in 2024. What are some of the challenges and the ways you've addressed those that didn't exist in 1921? They were dealing with different types of challenges, like you mentioned, big bands versus electric guitars type of thing.
Well, again, there would be no stage amplification up until really the 50s. So bands would play live. The drummer is just playing a drum kit. There's no mic on the kick. There's no little mic over the metal to get that sound out. Singers may have been amplified starting in the 20s, but even that would be rare and only in sort of high class joints that had spent a lot of money on their infrastructure. Um, but basically, a band would be playing totally acoustic. So that's not how it is anymore. Everybody wants to be amplified. Even the people who will be playing acoustic guitar and singing on a stage 15 feet from the audience in here now are going to be amplified, both the guitar and the voice. So that's one of the reasons we had to do all this acoustic treatment, was for that. Again, maybe it's coming from the theater, or maybe the fact that I was a lyricist in my old band. I want everybody to be able to hear the words. So it's like, even when if we have a punk show in here, like I know there's a lot of fans in the building of like the Mudmen. So I want to approach them and try and get them back in here. They've played shows here before. It was great. It was heavy. It was loud. I'm not sure you could really understand what anybody was saying. Hopefully, when we have those sorts of shows in here again, now people will be able to understand the lyrics, which to me is a big thing. Other than that, there's lots of technical upgrades, things that make things easier now. Like this is our console here, our PreSonus console. Now, what I can do with this is a stage box, which means I can plug any line, microphone, anything that's coming, in as input from the stage into that stage box. And rather than sending all of the audio information down a series of big, huge, heavy copper cables, which degrade the signal, I can send it over an Ethernet line, basically converting to digital on stage, sending it over the Ethernet line across the ceiling and into the console, and have full control over those inputs from the console. And again, it's all part of this plug and play aesthetic that I'm going for. We don't need direct boxes. People don't need to be, people can mic their amps if they want, but they can mic the amp and just everybody plug into the same box. If you haven't done much stage performance as a band, you might not understand how much setup time there is, even between bands. So if one band in the old days, meaning just 20 years ago, even if, so you have one band open the show, the next band's coming on. That changeover that would happen there can take 15 minutes of absolute chaos with 10 people working their butts off. I don't want that to be the case here. I want part of the value add for visiting artists is that we make this as simple as possible. And it's really technology that achieves that. So, I could have gone out and purchased just what we need to get by. In fact, I have a mixing console already that we could have used to just get by, but I don't want to just get by. This is a really great opportunity for my company. It's an incredible opportunity for the core of the city of Windsor, which again has just seen art's flight, and because of this lack of venues. So since I have this opportunity, I'm making a big gamble to do it properly, because I really think that doing it properly just creates such a value add that it's irresistible. It would be to me as an artist when I was touring. If I looked at the back line, if I looked at our back line when we're planning our tour, I would be, we need to play that place because it's just going to be a breeze.
I do want to, because of the angle of your camera, we get to see the roof. I do want to mention, or not the roof, the ceiling, I should say. I do want to give a shout out, and I don't know what your thoughts have been on this. We talked kind of about the acoustics, but the lighting in the building, right? The light fixtures themselves are, to my knowledge, original, not the bulbs, obviously, but the light fixtures themselves. The disco ball is famous. I think it was put up in the 50s or 60s. People always talk about that when we have the when I post anything on Facebook, that disco ball tends to come up. So I'm just curious, again, because you mentioned filming, right? They're going to be doing some filming in there. What has the lighting been like in terms of, to my knowledge, you haven't really touched that at all. I'm thinking it's probably was designed when it was built in the 20s to be well lit. But I have noticed you put some stage lights on, kind of looking. So,
Yeah.
but what's the lighting been like for, again, especially for live performances? I'm not sure how much it matters, but for filming, I'm guessing it's a pretty big deal. And you put it on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so you can see disco balls on in the background there. So you can
People love
see
that disco ball.
it's a beautiful instrument, and they're not easy to get a hold of these days, or at least good ones. Everything's just kind of mylar stretched over foam or whatever now. So ones that are actually constructed of individual little mirror glasses like that are getting hard to find. Um, but yeah, I love the lighting in here. It's very everything's on a dimmer, and it's all incandescent. So when you don't have them up to full power, it's very amber, right? Like you can see on that fixture how the light is very amber. And that's one of the reasons why I did have to install actual theater lighting, um, because we need to be able to match the ambient light when we have music in here. So I have to be able to tune my onstage lighting to match that. So you can see like there's a couple of my Fresnel specials up there. Those are incandescent as well, but we want to replace those with LED because those draw a lot of power and they throw heat. And so I would like to put them in my back stock for when I really need them and replace them with LED fixtures. But that's a $4,000 buy right there. So, everything else is are these colored LEDs, which I can do, anything with. I can turn them into strobes. I can do color chases with them, rainbow effects, all kinds of crazy stuff, and also match whatever ambient light we have. When we have theater on in here, all of the native fixtures, as in the fixtures that were already in the space, will be blacked out, and we'll be using exclusively stage lighting. When we have music in here, on the other hand, we will leave the conventional fixtures lit and just bring the stage up in sort of the way it is now. But like those sconces at the back of the stage space, like that's something that I would and to walk into a space that has all of these opportunities for me to kind of dress the things that are already in here in a really appealing way is fantastic for me as a designer, because 50% of my work's already done.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think the other thing I was curious about is the colored lights on the on the stage themselves, right? Because you got the blue, you got the is that primarily for live shows, or is that going to be for recording, or for both? Is it something that just gives the shows extra something just extra for the audience, or is that even for the theater companies? How will those? Because I've noticed sometimes I come in, I've seen they kind of be blue. Sometimes they're different colors.
It's
It
for
looks really cool.
Thank you. It's it's for use for every type of event. They would be reconfigured in different ways for different sorts of events. Um, it's general stage lighting, right? And one of the reasons that I went with these towers, as you can see, my colored lighting is just on sort of a big glorified, very heavy tripod. Uh, Part of my vision for this space is to use it as a modular space. So the performance area will not always necessarily be the stage. There may be certain shows where we want to do something around the center pillar and seat in the round. Or we've been talking about bringing in fashion shows and other types of entertainment that would use a catwalk. And, with these lighting towers, rather than using affixations like these bars up here that I've got my Fresnels hung from, uh, that allows us to light the space in a variety of ways and really make it a modular space rather than a client walking in and us just saying, yeah, this is it, this is the stage, this is the only way that you can do this. I also want artists, being an artist myself and knowing what it's like to walk into a space, I want them to have the freedom to creatively redesign their performance space in a way that best suits their vision and what it is that they want to do. And it also, so like you said, since it's also going to be in use by the lodges and by, maybe, and like when we have weddings or we have these other types of events, I need to be able to strike everything. So I can't build a permanent stage in here, permanent lighting fixtures. I guess I could, but I chose to do everything in a modular fashion. So we can strike the entire equipment set if we need to, right? Even the tech booth is just on a table. I can throw casters on the legs and unplug, wheel my tech booth right out. Drop these tripods, bring those out. Drop the speakers, bring those out. Pull all the cables. The room is right back to where it was when I walked in the door. And designing it that way was really important.
And I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I've been uh, very happy and very excited to see the work that you're doing. Your work on showing the work you're doing on Facebook. You know, a few years ago, we um, we had a lot of funding and we did a lot of work to restore the exterior of the building, the facade, to upgrade the elevator and upgrade the security features and accessibility features. But all that stuff is fine. But the purpose behind it was to create an interior, to create an inviting space in the interior that people would come and use, and again be a artistic and cultural hub and a part of the city, right? And you have kind of taken that idea and definitely ran with it, and that is wonderful to see. And we've done other things here and there, like we offer our wall space and shelf space to local artists to put up their paintings and their photos, and we've got dancing, we've got that type of stuff, but to actually have bands and videos being recorded and theater productions and rehearsal space, and it's turning it into a community home, which I think is wonderful, as well as a Masonic home.
And I'll add really quickly because you brought up the filming of videos, and I think you were alluding to this earlier, but I kind of missed it. Um, Another kind of sales point that I'm making, especially since we have this really up and coming film production program at the University of Windsor, is there are so many opportunities in this building as a location for film shoots that it's crazy. It's there. You could do everything from a Renaissance France dressing room to a speakeasy in the 1920s to like the kitchen from the Bear in the back. Like as speaking as someone who's been also involved in film production, I'll be in Vampire Zombies from Space, showing it with uh, the the opportunities in here for film production, and also because of the sound isolation from outside. Um, we've been talking now for an hour. There's a hospital across the street. There's a fire station a block away. We have not heard a single siren, a single car horn. And that is so incredibly rare when you're looking for locations that it's an amazing selling point. And especially with the university's program now just in the old Armories building, a few blocks away, there's a real synergy opportunity here uh, for the university to hopefully also be able to use this as a filming location for their students. And of course, there is a revenue stream that comes with that, right?
No, I absolutely agree with that 100%. And the like you said, it's funny because it is. I will say this: I've noticed that myself. That's a really unique feature of the ballroom. The sound, I guess isolation. We don't have that, unfortunately, in other parts of the building, like up on the third floor and the top floor. You can always hear the ambulances and if there's any commotion on the street. But I don't know if it's because it's kind of halfway underground or whatever it might be. But in that ballroom, you tend not to hear anything happening on the outside of it, which is a really unique, and I'm sure that was kind of done somewhat purposefully in 1921, designing it that way. So Yeah, no, I agree, and that is something I've noticed about the Masonic Temple is all the sounds except for what you want to hear tend to go away when you're in the ballroom. So
Yeah, and honestly, though, I will say that even in most of the rest of the building, from my experience, I haven't spent a lot of time like in the meeting rooms or anything like that. I've walked in and seen them, but compared to other buildings downtown that have sort of comparable spaces, it's really, really good. The sound isolation, again, you hear none of the traffic. You may hear some sirens, but you can just call sound off for 10 seconds and then get right back to shooting. It's uh, it's a really great unused opportunity, I think, and especially like I say, our film industry in Windsor is skyrocketing right now. Again, so much talent, and one of the things that digital filmmaking has enabled is for people without a lot of money to be able to make product. If they put the time and the effort in, they can make a product that competes visually and audio wise with with major productions. And so we are seeing like a producer who's, I think she's 25 or 26 years old, who used to work as an actor for me in shows, is now producing documentaries for CBC. Like, and she came out of the film program at the University of Windsor, and she came out of the cortisone theater system before that. But she's one of just of many, of dozens of creatives in this city who literally are being held up by the fact, only by the fact, not by technology, not by their abilities, but by the fact that there is no space for them to do the thing that they need to do. Creating art, and specifically performance art, requires space and it requires time. It's not like painting. You can go and do it in your garage. It needs to be somewhere where a large number of people can come into the building and either pay for tickets to be there or become the crew of a project that makes something that's film or an album or something like that. But it takes space and it takes time. And those are the two things that have not existed in this town. And my company's mission, it's become more, even more my mission than producing shows. I've been an artist for 30 years now. My entire life has been producing shows. I have put all of that on hold because I see the need for somebody, anybody, to work towards making the actual creation of the thing possible in the first place. Not just making the thing, but enabling the making of the thing.
and I mean, I again, I fully support that mission. I think you're doing a great job. The ballroom looks great. The lighting that you've put on the stage itself and the different colors, as well as the sound systems. Um, I've no doubt that your event on the 12th, your fundraiser is going to be great. I'll leave a link in the description. Like I said, I've got some tickets, and I'm hoping.
Templeblooms.ca. You can Temple Blooms, TEMPLEBLOOMS, templeblooms.ca. You can just follow that link and it'll take you to the homepage for this project. And right at the top, there will be a link to purchase tickets for the fundraiser.
So check that out. Links in the description, except all the things you say, links there. Please check it out. And if you are an artist, get in touch, and you're in Windsor or in the area, get in touch to see about using the space. If you're not an artist, but you just like to watch the arts, keep following Temple Blooms. And also, I've got a Facebook page which I started when we had our 100-year anniversary at the Masonic Temple, to try to collect stories about the building and kind of promote some of its history. I'll also try to share what's happening on there when I can, but the best place to go is templeblooms.ca,
Yeah, we
first and
also have
foremost.
a BHSP at the Masonic Ballroom.
So check those out.
And
Uh,
that's on Facebook. So
Yeah, and that's a great Facebook page as well. So I'll link all those things. I will. We're now starting. We're gonna post this later, but I'm not gonna start a live stream. I encourage people to jump on there. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to talk to me. And I'm wishing you guys all the best, and I'll be cheering for you. And I'll always try to buy a ticket, even if I can't go. But hopefully, the next event I'll actually be able to attend as well as just buy the tickets. So thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you, Cameron, for everything you've done to put this project together in its very infancy. And thanks for your time today to let me talk about it a bit.